Hear me now? Okay, you got to be real close, just for the speaker's benefit. You got to be real close to the mic. But I want to welcome everybody here, and I have to start off the meeting by declaring this special meeting of council will now come to order. This was not my original plan, but I was told that legally speaking, Ohio Public Meetings Act requires that if we have a quorum of council, a majority of council members present, it has to be an actual official meeting of council. So that is why we've done it. I can tell you that otherwise, you look around, we're not seated together, we're not going to be taking votes or taking any other business other than at the end we're going to have to move to adjourn. With that, I'm going to just briefly say what my thinking here has been about the purpose of this meeting. During the last campaign and well before that too, there had been feedback that the village was not giving people enough information about what the government was doing. And we thought, gosh, we're doing a great job. We've got a website that we just improved. We've got this Friday newsletter that comes out. We post all of the notices of our meetings with the agendas everywhere. You know, what more could we possibly do? Yeah. Well, it turns out there's probably a lot more that we can do. And tonight we're hoping to hear from our residents as to what some of those ideas they might have. And I will just say that, and I just have to get this issue on the table so that, you know, we all know about it, and then I hope we can just put it away. Some people have suggested that there might be a political motive for this, a political agenda for this meeting, that somehow we're trying to advance some cause of maybe local or even national politics. I can promise you that that is absolutely the furthest thing from my mind when I set up this meeting. The purpose of this meeting is to talk about the process, the means, the media by which the village government communicates with its residents. It is not to talk about the content of that communication. And so people who have pet concerns and all that sort of thing, this is not the right meeting to be at. As I was planning this meeting, I thought, well, who should be running it, and other than me, because I really shouldn't be, and I won't be. And who do I find who could actually do this job? And I was probably kind of turning it over in my head, and then somebody told me, well, you've got somebody already living in the village who's very good at this sort of thing, and she has moderated meetings of problem-solving groups many times, and when I reached out to her, Katie Gary said she would do it. She is a longtime resident of the village. She lives here with her husband Ryan and their 3 daughters, and when she is not spending her time raising 3 daughters, she has a business, Katie Creative, and it is an advertising agency that produces what they call the creative, or the copy that actually goes into ads. So I have asked Katie to come here and lead this discussion, moderate it, and really I'm going to fall back at this point and invite her to come to the mic and let her just kind of say what say what a moderator does.
Thank you, Don. So like Don said, today I'm just going to be serving as moderator of the conversation. And what that means is that facilitating the conversation, making sure everyone has an opportunity to speak who wants to. Also making sure we're staying on task and on time. Just to reinforce, we are here today to really answer the question, what might be all of the ways we improve village communication, we being the council of village government, with constituents? How might we better communicate information, share what is happening within the village with the residents. So really, that's what we're trying to understand from a villager perspective is what's missing? What are the opportunities that are available for improvement? What is working? Are there things that the village is doing very well, and how might we continue to improve upon those things? And where is it lacking? Is there a desire for more paper correspondence or more virtual social correspondence or something else entirely? And that's where it's really important to get people from the village with a diverse background and diverse wants and needs and desires, so that way we can better understand the constituents and how might the village council better serve them. So let me see. One thing, a piece of data that I think will be interesting for council to consider just as I kind of scan the room, and maybe Becky, you could count as I ask these questions, but I think from a demographic standpoint, I think it'll be important to understand the age groups that we have represented today, to kind of put that in the frame of reference of the feedback being received. So if you are 18 or under, please raise your hand. If you are 19 to 30, please raise your hand. If you are 31 to 50, please raise your hand. 2. If you are 51 to 70, raise your hand. And if you're over 70, please raise your hand. This is just to kind of give a little bit more context, because now what we've identified is really the under 50 crowd is not represented at this conversation. So there might be an opportunity for how might we better reach them. And this is a great now more focus group conversation, because now we're really getting specific information that we know will best serve our 51 and over crowd, and meet more of their needs. So I think just listening with that frame of reference, council members, and again, just to address what Don said, council members are sitting amongst you. The role today is really to listen, to receive the feedback, to understand. Council members are also constituents. They also live within this village. So if there are things that you have ideas for, you're welcome as a villager to come up and speak, and we'll listen with the understanding that you're representing you yourself as a villager, not you as a council person, if you choose to do that. And again, the goal is not to leave this meeting with answers, but to give council members all of our concerns and opportunities. And when I'm facilitating this in a creative setting, it's our wows, our worries, and our wish fors. So what are the wows? What's really working? What do we think is happening at an acceptable level? What are our worries? What are our concerns? What just has not been hitting the mark and helping us know what's going on in the village? And our wish fors, where are the opportunities that lie? So again, just try to come with offer of feedback, provide solutions to explore if you have ideas for them. And I would just also, before I sit over here, just kind of want to understand by a raise of hands who all is wanting to speak tonight, because we're trying to keep this time allotment so everyone can get back to their homes, but so we can figure out how much time to allow. So if you're interested in speaking, if you could raise your hand for us so we can kind of... Everyone else is just listening. All right, well, you each have 30 minutes. Just Ron's happy about that. I'm sure as people give their feedback and give their insights, I hope and I welcome any dissenting feedback, any aligned feedback. I'm sure when we hear from people, that'll get ideas flowing for all of us of our own sorts of opportunity areas. So with that, if you'd like to come and start. Oh, sure. Yes, please.
So we actually did not have anyone register to speak by Zoom. We did have one resident who was interested in it, but she's submitting something in writing. So we don't have any participants by Zoom. We have folks that are probably watching on YouTube Live, but unfortunately, I just don't have the ability to poll them.
So I'm thinking that, maybe because of the time of day, that there's some younger families.
So that would be something really great. If you are offering something in the crowd, it's going to be really hard for the audio to pick you up. But I do think that is an excellent point that could be brought to the mic because it does illuminate an area of communication that could be lacking. So if you'd like to just continue your thoughts up here, we'd love it. Thank you.
Well, I'll just repeat it so it's picked up, but the time of the evening is 5:30, and that fits pretty much with the demographics of the people that are here. We're all, for the most part, 50 and over, and we can either eat before we come or eat when we get home. But if you're home with 3 little ones, for example, they may not be able to be as patient when it comes to dinner time. So I just wanted to point that out because there are a lot of gray hairs here, which is great, means a lot of good experience, but I'm thinking that we really do need to try to get the younger people in our village more involved with village governance. I'm not sure how to do that. I'm sure there are a lot of people who have some brainstorming ways to go about that, and maybe plan some family events, maybe even some school-related events that would help people understand more about our village. So, thanks.
Thank you. Would you like to go next? Sure, please.
I don't have a whole lot to share in turn. Huh? Oh, I'm sorry, Linda Ewing. Okay, Linda Ewing, live on Lake Avenue, just down the street here, down the hill. I've been in the village since 1984, so I've been here a long time and watched a lot of changes go on in the village. But anyway, I just want to say I think our webpage is really nice for the village. If there's anything that I'm looking for, whether it's trash pickup or what's happening in the village for events, etc., I go to the webpage, or I read the Friday newsletter, which I find to be very helpful. And since Spencer, I guess, has taken over the newsletter, it's got a new look to it, which I like. And so I think all of that in my life is working because I'm very computer-oriented, and I do the social Facebook pages too, with the Glendale discussion page, the Neighborhood Watch, and the Friends of Glendale. The one thing I wanted to say about the discussion page on social media is that I think it has turned into a grievance page sometimes, where there's a lot of people that are discussing things amongst themselves when actually it should be addressed to the village office.
So Linda, I want to interrupt and just kind of probe there a little bit deeper.
Okay.
So how might that be eliminated with the use of a Glendale Village page on Facebook or whatever social?
Well, that's an interesting question because I have been thinking about that. But what I wanted to do was to thank Don. You've become more visible on Facebook recently in the last several months, I think. And some of the topics that have been brought up on the Facebook discussion page were basically things that should have been addressed to the village office. And Don's comments basically have been, if there's a problem, call me, come in and talk to me, let's discuss it. That's where it should be handled, not on Facebook. On the discussion page.
I want to make sure that we are providing feedback to council versus other villager Facebook groups. groups, because that is not necessarily village council ran. So others might bring, so what I'm seeing from that is there isn't a place on Facebook to bring village council related questions and information to, but they're being brought up in these social pages versus a channel that directly reaches the government leaders.
That would be a correct statement. On the discussion page, things like properties that aren't being kept up, complaints about their water bill,
Sure.
complaints about garbage not being picked up. Those are things that need to be addressed to the village office.
Sure. So
And-
how might the village better facilitate and accept those sort of complaints and considerations?
Well, for me, I would pick up the phone and call them. I would call the village and talk to David or Sally or Spencer, or drive down there and walk in. I wouldn't put it on a Facebook discussion page.
Okay.
I would take it directly to the source that can remedy the situation because it's a village issue.
Sure. So what I'm trying to get to is, what could the village do to let villagers know their availability and the ways in which to reach them that isn't on a Facebook group that they aren't owners of? Like, what else could they be doing? If we're seeing this occur on social media, Mike, you have a thought?
A phone call or possibly just send an email.
So I guess this is, some of the questions I might ask might be hypotheticals for council to consider. So what I'm hearing from Linda is that residents are bringing issues to a social media page that's not village owned, village ran, but expecting like actual village correspondence, it feels like, or just airing of grievances,
I
et
think it's
cetera.
more of a bitch session,
Sure.
actually, to be real crude about it. But I
Sure.
think they're looking for, to put out their grievance, and they're looking for other people to support
Sure.
their grievance. Not resolve it, but to
Sure.
support the fact that they feel upset about a particular
Yeah.
thing.
It feels like there might be an opportunity to better promote the ways in which the village council can be reached with these sorts of grievances. And or this is a Facebook admin page group issue and less of a village council issue, perhaps.
I think Tyler Jeffries is in charge of the Glendale discussion Facebook page. He's the administrator of it, so I don't see him here tonight. But he would be one that would be involved, I would think, because he could actually redirect some of those postings, I think, to either an appropriate place or send them down to the village to have it dealt with directly with the person who can listen.
Is that the responsibility of other villagers?
He's the administrator of it, so he's got the parameters on, he set up this page.
Sure.
And he allows a lot of things to be discussed on it. I mean, it's being
So-
discussed on that particular page.
Sure. So is there anything related to how council could share information versus how villagers might air grievances that you want to share with the group?
Well, I guess I'm old-fashioned. As I said, I would go down and talk to him directly. I would call him. I
Sure.
would email him, which is the way it's always been set up. It works with other companies to just deal with it. I don't know that the village needs its own Facebook page, but it's a possibility. But it won't stop what's happening on the discussion page,
Sure.
I don't think.
Sure.
Because it's on people posting there are doing it for a reason other than resolution.
Okay. It feels to me that that's out of council's control. And I think that's something else we need to take into consideration, is just what's the sphere of influence that council has, and resident ran groups is probably not something that council is able to have any input on or any sway over. So just to see, I feel like the intent of this meeting for council is to help them better understand how they might better support communication to and from villagers. And since a Facebook group ran by a villager is probably outside their sphere of influence.
Right. The only thing good, as I was mentioning, is the fact that Don has become more visible.
Sure.
He's actually reading the posts, and maybe before he was reading and not responding, but now he's reading and trying to redirect back to your office, back to the village office, which I think is a very positive move.
Great.
Cool. To get some kind of resolution.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Linda.
Okay. Thank you.
Ron, you had said you wanted to speak, and if any others, please, as Ron is finishing up, just raise your hand so I can acknowledge you to the podium. Go ahead, Ron.
I'm Ron Vischer. I was a candidate in the last election, and the mayor, when he set this up, said one of the reasons that... Right up close. Is this better? Is this better? I guess it is. So when Don set this up, he mentioned that one of the reasons he thought it would be a good idea was he noticed there was a lot of talk about communication in the last election. And one of the my campaign platforms was indeed communication. It's because I believe in a representative government, and by communication, I believe in what Katie was saying when she introduced the topic, and that's we're all here to listen. And I think one half of communication is outward communication, but the other half is listening. And I thought it was excellent that you identified who the audience was and that who we had here, because there are a lot of people that aren't present. And I think that listening is something which is active. It's not just passive. I think if council were to say, okay, I'm going to take the responsibility to make sure that this neighborhood is heard, or that neighborhood is heard. When I was involved with Save Our Green Space, what I found was there were lots of people that said to me, well, the green space over in Johnny's Park really isn't important because it's on the other side of town. And the people that lived on that side of town said, this is really very, very important. And so the question became, how are we going to get a representative sampling of how the village feels about a given topic? And that's both the number of people that feel one way and also the intensity of how they feel about something. Because obviously if people feel very strongly about an issue, that issue may be more important to the village and how it appears to people outside the village than if they don't. The other thing that I think is a little bit humorous is the laughter I got when I cheered about not having a time limit and being able to speak for as long as I want. Some of the meetings I've attended were very crowded and I was limited to 3 minutes. That's a short time to be able to really make a point and to try to influence people. And so the more that we can have time to deliver on a topic or talk about a topic, the better. I really respect council, and so I put in a lot of work and a lot of research to make sure that the points that I'm making are points that aren't wasting council's time. I know sometimes when I'm sitting back and listening to the council respond or a committee respond to something that I've been limited to 3 minutes to say, and they're tossing the idea back and forth for 15 and 20, I wish that they had a time limit on them as well. And so if we're going to put time limits on people, then I think we should put time limits on people and make sure that the balance of the communication is equal. But my primary thing here is to say I think listening counts, that listening is something that needs to be active, proactive, and if you don't understand what someone is saying, that you need to clarify what they're saying. You need to be asking questions. So what did you mean by that? If somebody does something that doesn't make sense to you, you need to be asking the question, well, why would someone do that? I wouldn't have done that if I were in their shoes. And those kinds of conversations to try to make sure that you're understanding others, I think is what a representative government is all about.
Ron, one follow-up question. It could be said that this is obviously like a listening opportunity, but what might be in the effort of providing possible solution ideas, what might be other opportunities for listening that you feel council could embody?
One of the things I was thinking about as we had this town hall was when President Biden came to town, he also had a town hall meeting. And in order to speak at that town hall, you needed to submit a question, and then those questions were cleared to see how important they were to the community. He wasn't able to get to all of the questions that were submitted, but the most important ones were things that he was able to answer. And so the execution of the town hall so that what's important gets addressed, I think would be excellent.
In what ways were the importance of the questions kind of validated? Or how might we validate the importance of questions?
Well, I think that would allow council to decide, what had the highest, I'll use the word vocality, which is the amount of conversation about a topic, and they could look at other communication vehicles like Facebook to see which topics had 10 comments on them and which had 50 comments on them and which only had 1 or 2, and use that. But the other thing is if there indeed is an outreach program where there's a representative that we have that says, okay, I'm going to take all the streets between X and Y, and somebody else says, I'm going to take all the streets between Y and Z, and make sure that there is an outreach so that we sample more than just us old guys that have time to come to these meetings. That can make sure that some of the younger people have a voice, because they're the future of the village.
Great. Anything else? Right. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of things I'd just like to throw out for the group to think about. Okay? Better? Okay. First of all, I want to apologize. I guess I made the wrong call, but when I set the time of the meeting at 5:30, I thought, well, good, people will be home from work. And I was concerned that if I set it late after dinner, that a lot of people would not care to come. They were, getting ready to put the kids to bed or whatever. But we should keep this in mind and maybe find a happy medium here or something along those lines. When I scheduled the meeting, I had a couple of issues in mind that I just want to throw out. And one of them is, how big a problem is it that we don't have a really effective means of communicating with people who don't have broadband for their computers and are not comfortable using their computers to receive information? I'd be interested in any thoughts or ideas that we could do. I mean,
well, first, I'll interrupt just momentarily. Does anyone here have trouble with internet access and availability? Marilyn. So, I mean, I think, we need to talk to the people who have those issues. We could all speculate here in this room what those issues might be, but unless we go to those people, we won't be able to really understand their full pain points and how we might best reach them.
And that is a good point, and of course everybody here probably got the notice of the meeting by computer, so it's a self-selecting group. At the same time, in the interim, I would urge that if you know people who are not getting information with their electronically, that you reach out to them when you know something that, when you hear something that might be of interest to them, you know, we can distribute hard copies of the newsletter, but I'm not sure how we can get them in the hands of the people who really need them. So that's just one thought and one concern that I have. I'm going to let maybe other council members would like to speak.
Or anyone else. I know we yes, Marilyn, please. But just when I feel like it's a good opportunity to allow council members to be themselves, not council people in this. So if Marilyn, you're speaking as Marilyn.
Yes, I am.
Yes.
I am speaking as Marilyn Duke, and I am speaking as Marilyn Duke. And while my household has very sophisticated computer technology and applications and internet protections and access, the internet does go down sometimes, and we lack internet access. So just because a household has internet access is not to say that it is consistent across the board. I am aware of some residents who have no internet access in their homes, who live in Glendale. And then lastly, I'd like to mention that I am also aware that internet access comes with risk of being hacked and email being sent in your name, which you did not send, and that has definitely happened to me. And I'll reference an incident with my garden club, not to mention any with council, but I was physically at a meeting with my garden club, the Village Gardeners of Glendale, and 2 members said to me, "I just received an email message from Marilyn." And I said, "I'm standing right here in front of you. I have not sent any email message." And so the point I'm making is email and internet access comes with a lot of risk, some of which is unreliability of what information is coming through. So I'm voicing those 3 concerns: inconsistent access, no access, and too frequently unreliability due to hacking. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Any other thoughts? Yeah, Devin?
My name's Devin Baldridge. I live on 760 South Troy. And I just wanted to offer up a potential one way to think about a solution. And I think we have a tendency to converge and try to identify the perfect solution when maybe the solution is actually to offer up multiple solutions to any given challenge. So if people have an issue with technology, but we know they need to get information, maybe we can be consistent in the information that we deliver to them, but we offer them different means to receive it.
Can you elaborate just on what might be those different means to receive it, just for clarity?
I mean, I think we've have a contingency that is comfortable with social media or digital media. So emails could be a sufficient form of communication for that group. For those that are less comfortable with that, I am not that person, so I would only be speculating, but snail mail, village posts, bulletin boards are all static but accessible forms of communication that could be considered to reach other folks.
Great, thank you. Thanks for the clarity. Go ahead, Mike.
Mike Bessel, serve on council, live at 160 East Fountain, but not a council person tonight, just a resident like everybody else. So a couple of things. Linda pointed out something I think that's very good. I know that Facebook is very useful for some people. I don't use it. I don't know how it is used. I don't know how it's productive. It's something I don't think about because I don't use it. So, you're looking at kind of a dinosaur at this point. But if there are issues, the best solution I have found is either email, phone call to the village office, and they will quickly respond and get you in touch with the right people. Or David will tell you, okay, we'll come over and take care of it, whatever. I've always had good luck with that, so that can work. As far as other means of communication, that's the thing I wanted to really address. And I know you're trying to not have this be a meeting about how do you get in touch with the village. I get that part. It's how does the village communicate with residents.
No, I think it's both.
Okay, but what Ron mentioned, that the back and forth. The idea that people can come and communicate with the village, and the village needs to communicate out in an effective manner. So the bulletin boards have always been used. One suggestion a while back was just put the newsletter on the bulletin board. And then people can see it, but people don't always read the bulletin board. It's kind of archaic. So perhaps something that we could do, I thought about, how do we get the news out? Everyone gets a water bill. So maybe in one of the water bills, we send a sheet that says, here, turn this back in with your water bill if you want village communications by mail or a message on your telephone answering machine if you have one, a message on your cell phone. So I still have a phone in my house. That's combined with it's going to take a communication out to say, do you need a different form other than electronic? And if you do, let us know. At that point, I think if people don't respond back after a couple of times, then you're reaching the people that would like to be reached. As far as meeting time, we had several children. There was never a time we could attend meetings. Don, I think you picked as good a time as you could. Katie, is there a better time when we could try this again? I think this is the best one.
I mean, N of one. I'm one person in that demographic group, and Amy, please chime in as well. But I'm with you. To me, the importance of the meeting needs to be communicated and communicated sooner. Like, what is the topic? Like, why do I need to attend? Why should I rearrange my schedule in order to accommodate being here when I have homework and practices and dinner and bath and bedtime?
I get that because it's Friday night.
Sure.
The weekend, you really shut off, and then Monday night's the meeting, so who has time to prepare?
So yeah, if there was more urgency in the top, like expressing like what the topics are, and more time in which to prepare for them and to rearrange things, I think we may potentially see younger demographic in higher participation.
Got it. And then the last thing I'll ask, not as a council person, but as an old guy, I'm living in my house and I think things are going pretty okay. Maybe it could be explained a little bit more what people are looking for from the standpoint of better communication.
That's the whole point of this whole meeting.
Okay.
So maybe you said it more clearly.
I don't know.
But what...
I kind of tend to get right to the point.
No, I love it.
All right.
So
All right.
what are people looking for? I think as moderator, I'll hold my responses, but because it's really hearing from you all who are here in attendance, and I don't know if Amy, you want to chime in on the first bit first that Mike brought up about the time, or if you have any other thoughts you might want to share.
And can I get one more before I go?
Yeah, one for the road.
David's a young guy. He's in touch with other village governments. What do they do? So that's enough.
We'll let David take that, and then Amy, if you want to share your thoughts.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Most, if not all, village governments in our area utilize social media, and they do that because I think their goal is to at least meet people in the medium that they already use to communicate. And I think that is something that we're investigating anyway, but this forum is a good opportunity to kind of pick out specific things about it that would make it more engaging and make it more interesting and more helpful. It doesn't reach the folks that don't have internet access or don't rely on internet access or, whatever variation of that there may be. We've investigated things like direct text messaging to village residents who sign up. Now, that's something that I'd like to think is a little bit more accessible than an email or web-based application, because I don't know anybody who, if you have a cell phone, you get text messages. And they don't need to include a link to the website. The information can be included in the text message. And likewise, they can work the other way so that information can come into the village. So if you have a concern about a neighboring property's condition, pothole, any of the number of normal everyday calls that we get, that's also an option that we're looking into. And if there's interest in that, we'll continue to pursue it. But really, the web-based social media is and email, websites are the biggest way to get information out, because unfortunately, when it comes to things like scheduling meetings and trying to get agendas and those items out, because those items are timely, mailing them or putting them in a quarterly newsletter or something like that really delays the receipt of those items and makes it difficult to kind of bring those two things together. But that's just kind of my perspective.
Thank you. Amy?
Hello. Okay, I'm Amy Baldridge. I serve on council. I'm the new girl, so I'm still figuring out how everything works. A couple of thoughts on the timing when we were scheduling this. I was concerned that it wasn't a good time for a big chunk of the population because of the things Katie said. This is kind of the witching hour. You're switching from coming home from work, picking up kids, cooking dinner. It's just a hard in-between time. So I feel like going forward, if we want to try to reach a different demographic, in our parenting experience, something like 7 o'clock helps, because at least at that point, all those things are done and one parent can be home and do bedtime and the other can go out to a meeting. So I've been able to manage a lot of 7 o'clock type meetings throughout our parenting experience so far. About text messaging and Facebook and that sort of thing, I think there is a cultural shift maybe with the younger half of the population to really liking quick answers and liking an impersonal way of doing things. So David and I talked briefly about having a system where you can text the village, because the reality is I think a lot of people don't really want to pick up the phone and talk to a real person. And it's faster to go to Facebook and ask your question, even though that's not necessarily the best or most accurate outlet. People get quick information that way, but they could get better, maybe more accurate, if we had, a text message system, or if we end up with a Facebook page, like there's a messenger feature built into that, so that would be good. I'm trying to think if there was something else I wanted to. As far as people who don't have internet connection, I really wonder what proportion of the village residents that is. If I had to guess, I would think maybe 10% or so. But I'm wondering, by a show of hands, how many of you know someone right around your little neighborhood who does not have internet? Okay.
And then that begs a question for me, Amy, is how, with our village being the size that it is, and this is a hypothetical, this isn't to be answered right now, but what might the investment be to have some level of village internet access available, whether that's at the square or somewhere else. But like, if McDonald's can do it, why can't a village do it, is a question.
Yeah.
Library, sure. But so then the library is open 2 days a week for 4 hours each day. So like, just in what ways might we provide internet access to villagers would be a question that I would pose to council, and then let them think about how you might solve that.
Mm-hmm. And I like what Mike suggested about attaching it to, a water bill or something, so that we know every household in the village has been surveyed and given the option to say, I want snail mail. And then we can narrow it down, whether that's 100 households or whatever, we can mail that out and kind of stop wondering about that. And I also like that idea of a text, just like we get from whether it's fire department or emergencies or events coming up. Why couldn't we do that about village events coming up too? Thank you.
Great, thank you. Anyone else with thoughts? We've had a lot of different topics come up as far as meeting times and how might we best serve and reach villagers. We've had the topic of internet access and availability and what that might mean. The medium in which villagers prefer to be communicated to and with. If any of that or some other topic is, yeah, Devin, that sparks something for him. We'll see what it is.
My wife's way better on the mic than I am, so apologize. So I think a lot of the discussion has been around modalities. How do we choose to receive information? I think that's really great. I wanted to shift the conversation a little bit, if it's appropriate, to how do we deliver the communication? In business, one of the strategies that we use when we're conducting meetings and we're leading programs is to set expectations. There's tremendous power in orientation, and I think that is only magnified when you're working in a government role. So setting clear expectations on what the work is, how you expect the work to be conducted, the time horizon associated with doing that work, and then giving updates periodically on how it's progressing is a great way to keep people in the know and keep them oriented. Speaking from experience, when I've lacked that information, my mind tends to swirl, and that's where speculation comes in. That's where tensions arise because I am potentially misinterpreting the actions that I'm seeing or not seeing. So I think as a practice, I would love to see council potentially start to adopt just a little, and it may feel very elementary, but I think elementary is really good in this case, but adopting just a process of telling people what you're going to tell them what you told them, tell them what to expect, tell them how it's going to happen, tell them how it's progressing, tell them when it's coming to a close. And I think my sense is by adopting a simple practice like that, a lot of the tensions that we've maybe experienced in the past around topics might be mitigated.
Yeah, and just to build on that a bit, when Mayor Lofty invited me to moderate this, he was like, of course you know about this forum that's happening. And I was like, oh, what forum that's happening? So that was a clear miscommunication that I hadn't seen it in a newsletter. Just to that point of how the process in which information is disseminated, just if that's in place, again, like in business, in my work, you have lead times built up for different deadlines you might set. So if we know this type of communication needs to be out at this time, then work backwards in a project management way to establish when do we need to know the topics, when does it need to be edited, et cetera, to get to when it's actually being communicated to villagers. When do we need to solicit feedback from villagers perhaps to then inform the decisions we're making. So just if that process is in place, how might we better communicate and in a transparent way? Yeah, Linda, please. Will you bring it to the mic?
Again, Linda. My question is, I'm listening to all of this. I have a couple of questions. One, I guess I would like you to find out with the group here that everyone here is happy with the communication or not happy with the communication. And if there's people here who are not happy with the communication, what is it that would make it better for them?
That is also the intent of this meeting, and giving everyone the opportunity to come to the mic and voice that. I can't make people come and speak, but absolutely reinforcing the goal of this meeting. I'm 100% with you.
Is to find out, is everybody happy? And if not, why? Why not? and what would make it better. And if everyone here is reasonably happy with the communication within the village, who are the people who are not happy, and where are they? If we're here to discuss it.
And I wonder if it's happy or not happy, or satisfied or informed might be the better or a different way to express it. If there's that knowledge base versus if you're here and you're happy with the communication, we'd love to hear why. If you're here and you are dissatisfied in the ways in which you're being communicated with, absolutely need to hear why as well. That's the whole point of today.
Right, but I'm not hearing any of that. So that's what I'm kind of wondering.
You can invite your friends to the board.
Where is all this coming from? You know, are we trying to solve a problem that maybe there really is not really a big problem, but you're looking for other things, you know?
A couple of people in the back. We haven't heard from you, ma'am, and I'm sorry I don't know your name. Yes, please. Are you able to get to a mic, or can I bring one to you? Okay.
I'm Nancy Wing. My family's, sorry.
There we go.
I'm Nancy Wing. My family's lived in this village since 1956. This is the first council meeting that I've ever been to. I never knew that it existed. I think the hard copy's a good idea because I never knew. If my friend hadn't told me, I wouldn't be here tonight, and I'm so glad to be here, and I'm so appreciative, and I would really appreciate a hard copy. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, yes, please. I didn't see your hand over there. Good.
I guess I couldn't be seen back there in the corner. My name is Brenda Daniels, and I live at 79 Washington Avenue. And I grew up in Glendale and left and then came back. And one of the big problems that I see with communication in Glendale is that I feel as residents that we are told certain things will happen. And so we don't have the input before it happens. A prime example is the town hall, which is a place where I know me and my family and lots of people I know, we use this for lots of events, graduations, weddings, etc. And we always used it because it was a great price and it was a blessing because many of us don't have incomes like some other people might have. And I came to a meeting one night and found out that the town hall was no longer that reasonable price. It was like the big price now. And so I was very upset by that. And I said, well, now how is it that I didn't know that there was this ideology that we need to increase the price for the town hall for residents when we've been using it for years at a great price? I mean, it was a real low price. Now it's real high. So it's non-usable for a lot of the people who use it on a regular basis. So, lack of communication. Because at some point in time, had I known that was the topic, I would have come and spoken on it and said, hey, it's a lot of people in Glendale that can't afford to pay that price and then sponsor the event. Because you got to rent the place, then you have to get a caterer, then you have to, the decorations and everything, so it'll be real nice. So that was one example of me not knowing what was going on, and I think a lot of the residents, when we heard it, was like, wow, somebody has priced us out of the town hall.
Yeah. How best?
And I can't afford the Lyceum, so I don't have an alternative.
In what ways would you have wished you were communicated with? Or where would you have gone to get that information?
I didn't get it. I have an email address, and I have texts, and I have, you know, the robocalls. When something's happening on the street, I get a call saying, you know, they're going to block off Sharon Road for X amount of days and blah, blah, blah. So I think a robocall would have been nice, you know, where we have something really important to talk about. We're thinking about changing the price structure of the town hall. Anybody that's interested, please come out. And I think you would have seen people here, or whatever the issue is. I'm just using this as
Sure,
an example.
absolutely.
This is just an example.
Where would you go to find that information now? Like if you are looking to rent the town hall for an event, like where do you go to confirm availability and price and things? What's your
Just
process?
go down to the village office.
Okay.
And ask to be on the calendar, put down the deposit and that kind of thing, you know.
There's you wouldn't use a website or something like that to look?
No, not
Okay.
me. I guess because I'm just kind of old school and
Okay.
I've been here a while. I would just go down to the office,
Okay.
you know. But I do like the way you're doing the water bill now, where I could text my information. I love that. But I'm a little bit savvy with that, but everybody's not. The other issue I wanted to raise is that you were talking about broadband and whether or not people had internet. Some people don't have computers. So if you don't have a computer, it doesn't matter if you, have the broadband or the internet.
Very fair.
Because you can't use it. So I think there has to be multiple ways. And like I said, I like that little robocall. Because when I get that little call, because if I get it and I'm not here and I don't answer, it's going to be on my recording.
Sure.
So I can go back and listen to it, you know. And so texting would be great. I do get the newsletter, but sometimes they're so lengthy. I'm scrolling, I'm just trying to do it real quick, real quick.
So the newsletters you find to be very lengthy and
Yes, lengthy. It has to be, concise.
Sure.
Snippets, bullets,
okay.
that kind of stuff,
If the newsletter is more of a snippet and more bullets, where would you expect to go to get like the full story? If the newsletter just kind of has it in digestible pieces.
I'm not sure where I would get all the details later. Or if it's bulleted at the top, then I'll know, I want to read that one. So then I'll scroll down and read the one I want to read in detail.
Great.
Something like that, possibly.
Great. Thank you. That's helpful.
Yeah. So just the biggest, from my perspective, and I would say a lot of the people that I speak with who live up on my side of town, which is over on Washington Avenue in our area up in there, I think the biggest problem is that we feel like we're being told things after it happens and not given the benefit of helping develop the plan as it is thought of here. Okay, I have a great thought, I have a great idea, okay, we're going to talk about a bullet going out or email going out or a phone call going out. This week, 2 weeks or 3 weeks, we're going to talk about, like you said, communication, know.
How do you want to be engaged to be brought into that conversation? Like if there's an issue that you feel like you should be invited to give feedback before a decision is made, like
what medium?
Yeah, like how do you want to be reached for your opinion?
Once again, I said I like the calls. I really, really like the calls because everybody, you get your phone calls, or a text. I like text too, I think texts or calls, because I don't think everybody has the internet or everybody will respond to the internet, like I said, because it's lengthy. When you get the newsletter, it's a lot.
Sure.
And so if it's something real, real important, there has to be a way of communicating that to somebody and then giving us time to gather our thoughts.
Sure.
So that you can even talk to a few people and say, hey, this is something that, this is important. Come on out,
Sure.
And I often thought that a good way, and it was what Mr. Fisher was saying, is that it's almost like in this village, we have different pockets, okay? And it would be nice if every pocket was represented.
Sure.
Even in the discussion plan. If you're going to have a discussion about something, you should have somebody that live over on Annandale in the group. You should have somebody who lives on Ivy over there in that area on the group. You have somebody who lives on Washington Avenue. It has to be a mix of all the community because we have a vast amount of income in this community. We have a vast amount of ideology, and racial differences and cultural differences, and you want to get a mix of all of that when you're planning, and not later on when people are dissatisfied. We could do it in the beginning, and
More of a proactive versus a reactive approach.
thank
Okay,
you.
Thank you. I think
Actually,
David
Brenda,
wanted to.
I did want to ask you a question, and you kind of answered it, but I just want to be sure here. So I want to also to explain the different levels of phone-based communication that we use. Those robocalls are run through the Alert Hamilton County system. We try to keep those for emergency situations or road closures, water main breaks, those kinds of situations. So I want to not say that we're going to put council notices out through those necessarily, because we want to keep folks engaged in getting those messages that way. However, if we do transition to something like a village-wide text message that could be for like low to medium priority information compared to a road closure or something, do you think that there would be that community engagement to be able to get that information that way and follow up with the village? Because you mentioned the town hall price change.
Yes.
One of my questions is, and I know council members know this real well, sometimes our packets can be lengthy. I mean, we're talking 20, 30 pages worth of stuff that is at best, mildly interesting, when it comes to some things, but other stuff is so dense that you can't work your way through it without actually taking time to sit down, which most people don't have. Is there a way, and maybe this is a better question for the group, sorry to derail this, Katie.
No, it's okay.
Is there a way to get those items like the town hall price change, which might be otherwise buried on a council agenda? Is there a way to get those items to the forefront so that folks understand it? Because I can try to guess on priorities, but I'm not going to get it right 100% of the time. And like you mentioned, I'm not going to get it right for every pocket of the village either. But I also don't want to send out a text message that has the entire council packet on it, because that's not going to do anybody any good.
Sure.
So I'm just kind of looking for that happy medium between making sure folks are aware of what's going to be discussed, but also doing it in a way that folks get it quickly and get it reliably. Does that make some sense to folks?
It does. I think that if I like the idea, like for instance, I know when I get one of those robocalls that it's going to be something that's affecting the entire village. I do know that, and I think it's going to be high priority because you wouldn't be sending it. So maybe if we did have some kind of Glendale something that's not the same as the high priority,
Yes.
That these are the key points that we're going to talk about at council, and you might be interested in these key items, please come out or something. And then if I hear it, or maybe somebody else hear it and they come knock on, hey, they're going to talk about so-and-so. And so it's sort of like the scuttlebutt, you start talking to each other or just reminding each other, hey, come out to the meeting because we're going to talk about something that's real important. And possibly that's what will happen. And I'm thinking if you have somebody from every aspect of the community on like a nucleus when you're beginning to talk about something. Like for instance, one thing I kind of got bristled up about is when that there was some kind of committee or some kind of land something where people were beginning to where the Glendale formed some kind.
Could you step back up to the mic?
Oh, I'm sorry. Glendale formed some kind of real estate something with real estate, okay? And I said, well, who's on the real estate committee? Nobody asked me. Did anybody ask? I started asking, were you asked about the real estate committee? How do you get on it? Did you get recommended for it? Were you assigned? Were just people put on it? That's the kind of stuff that's frustrating to residents, and you find there's a real estate committee and they're selling property all around you and you wasn't even advised in any way, shape, or form that you could have possibly even been on the committee to kind of help with deciding what's going to happen in your neck of the woods. You know what I'm saying? So then you feel like you've just been pushed aside. So that's just a little. Yes, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Right.
And so, okay, who's on it? Who put them on it? Is it a representative of the whole Glendale community or not?
Great
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah,
Great
okay.
questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we have been here for over an hour, and I'd love if anyone else has any thoughts to share. Is that a hand raise? Oh yeah, Charlie. Sure. Yeah, Charlie, you're very shy.
Well, my name is Charlie Pierce, and I live on West Sharon, and my family's been in the village for a long time too. And I'm having trouble articulating what I'm going to try and say here. There is a great number of people in this village that don't give a damn. They're not interested. They want Mr. Mayor Lofty to take care of the village's business. And so they don't get involved. They're not interested in getting a letter in the mail. Robocalls. In our family, we don't even have a landline. So how do we bring them in? We have to figure out how to bring them in. And that includes all the demographics, not just race, but the age groups. Fortunately, Amy is on the council now. She is the age group that we need to attract to get involved in our village, to bring our village back stronger than it has been of late. And I don't know how we do that. At this meeting, Libby and I almost didn't come today for one reason, because it's preaching to the choir. The same people come to the same meetings. And there's almost never, the people that we need to participate aren't coming. And I don't know how we fix that. I really don't. I stay up at night trying to figure, how do we get somebody that really is not even interested? Mayor Lofty, just take care of it. And you know what I'm saying. They don't care how he does it, just do it. And because you're our protector. You really are. This whole board is our protector, and it is your business. You're our last line of defense against the outside world. I don't care, and you're all we got. Just food for thought. That's all. I don't have. Usually I don't complain unless I have a solution. I don't have a solution.
Thanks, Charlie. Kevin?
That is the perception that our mayor and our village administrator and the people that we put in office to work for us are taking care of business. But can you hear me now? Yeah. But that is not the case here. We have such deficiencies that it is too much for people to handle the truth. For instance, Mayor Lofty just talked about honesty and transparency, and yet when the audit came out, they didn't attach the management letter that tells the real problems that we have with the village of Glendale. It's an 8-page document that you can go on the web and get. It tells about deficiencies. It tells about people that are doing positions and jobs in this village that haven't got certifications or the training necessary to perform them. It talks about a public records system that the commission doesn't seem that it's a priority to have meetings which are mandated by the state every 6 months. Mayor Lofty is one of the people on that committee. He says that they couldn't have it because of the pandemic, but yet we have these council meetings We don't even have a public record system. We don't have a system where people put in for public records and they log it, journalize it, tell of the results, and handle the business of the village. We won't even talk about the water problem that we have in this village that has gone unaddressed for so long that people just tolerate it. The Brandywine situation, you got people in hazmat suits and we have no public health announcement, no warning, none of that. We have to question the actions of our administrators, especially when things just don't add up. You've got this is Glendale. This is not Glendale where I live at. We've got a speed bump, which is a safety device that still hasn't been finished in 2 years. 2 years. And this is a safety device. So if we've got this kind of workmanship, well, we've always had that type of workmanship on our side of town. To get Glendale together, we need to make it inclusive. That's why I give a pig roast every year, to show people that we're not so much different than we seem like. Maybe financially, but materialistic value you cannot carry with you after you die. So you might as well build some real value in meeting some people and networking, because that is what is valuable. We're in the National Historic Village of Glendale, and yet we have not raised up one hero for the heroes that established this community. Are we stepping outside the communications issue? Well, this is all communications. We can put Who Day on a historic sign, but we can't say anything. Huh? In a National Historic Village that had rich white folks helping blacks get to freedom is no communication. They had a hell of a network to help get people free.
So let's make sure that what you're saying is valid, but is this the forum for how might we communicate better with villagers? And I think where you were starting absolutely was communication issues, but let's just stay.
Inclusion.
Sure. How might we better include all village
Inclusion.
residents?
Like when the snowplow comes up on Washington, it turns at Jefferson. Every time. That's how we are accepted in this community.
Well, I'll moderate, please. If you'd like to come up to the mic next, you can have an opportunity to speak.
Yes, every time in the snow.
So in what ways, Kevin, would you like the village to is this a communication issue or a utilities issue?
I don't know. I communicate to them quite often. I mean, in public records requests and in person. I've told them about a lead pipe that's been exposed for 20 years. And exposed on the drive and on this side of the sidewalk.
Have you been able to receive updates on the status, or are you not receiving any information?
Status of what? Just what Glendale Post?
Of the pipe leak getting fixed. Like if you're raising issues to the government, are you receiving
No,
status
I'm not
updates?
receiving feedback. Like the safety device, the speed bump that they put up there for 2 years is gone unfinished, and I've told them about this constantly at council.
Sure. So what type of communication would you be looking for from council to help you feel like they've heard you, help you feel like your issues have been addressed, or let you know that your issues that were raised aren't a concern to them? Like, how do you want it to be communicated back to you?
Well, I would just like to have an issue addressed instead of overlooked. Like Summit Park, I brought the fact that the mosquitoes and the water problem, and we just swept it up under the rug and don't address that. That it's a swamp area and mosquito infested. So
Are you, so what I'm hearing is you as a resident, you're raising issues to council, but not receiving a response back to acknowledge the receipt of your
This
feedback?
is what council says. When I raised the issue of the speed bump, which is ongoing for 2 years now, we'll check it out. When I raised the issue of the pipe that is exposed, this is a ragged lead pipe that is exposed and been exposed for 20 years. And when they do the street, it's still exposed. There's no excuse. There's no excuse at all. The streets committee, I haven't seen anybody from them looking up. We got we got a dead end street, so if they come down our street, we're very observant.
To just summarize, it feels like issues are being raised by concerned citizens and response isn't being given, updates aren't being given, and it feels like work isn't being pushed forward. For
20 years?
Right. But just
2 years?
Right. Just to summarize, like to frame it back to the communication issues, like these issues are raised and acknowledgement hasn't been provided in your experience, and progress hasn't been made to address the issues that
Pretty
you've
much.
raised.
The latest that I asked was, could we get an answer on when was the phase 1 sanitary sewer reduction project finished? Mayor acknowledged that it's finished, but I haven't got anything that in writing that says that acknowledges that. I've put in public record requests.
More access to public records, number one, access to public records, and then acknowledgement and transparency and communication of things that have occurred or status updates if they are still in progress.
Well, why I bring these things out in the open is because the Village of Glendale, Mayor Lofty administration has been less than transparent and honest in providing an accurate update to residents as to the current status of the village and its business.
In what ways do you want to receive information to make it, what would make it feel like information is being shared transparently? Is it phone calls? Is it emails? Is it something else? Like how would you feel to receive?
Well, the problem is we have such a level of racism here that it's hard to hear the truth. I'm just saying you want to know how to get to inclusion?
Sure.
Then we have to address the main issue here.
Well,
why is it that the black community is always last to receive upgrades?
I can't speak to that as moderator of the conversation. I'm just trying to I don't want to invalidate any of the things that you're raising because they're absolutely important issues to be discussed. I just want to make sure that the forum that we're using today is focused on communication and how the village might best communicate to and with residents.
Well, we have a failure to communicate when the village is putting out false information. We just had an audit, and they did not put a complete audit out to show the status of what our audit was.
So, well, yeah, that's fine, David.
Yeah, I'd like to specifically address the audit comment. The management letter is a document that the state auditor prepares that is a confidential document that is distributed to the elected officials and management of the village. It is a public record. It is available through the Auditor of State's office. It is the auditor's record to distribute, not the village's record to distribute. If anyone would like a copy of it, they're more than welcome to contact the Auditor of State's office and receive it. The items that are listed within it are items that are used for guidance purposes for the village going forward. The audit report that's available on our website, glendaleohio.org/audit report, highlights the more substantial items that are higher priority in the eyes of the auditor that the village has already taken steps to address or will take steps to address into the future. So the idea that the village is not being transparent is unfortunately is not accurate, and you're more than welcome to contact the Auditor of State's office to receive a copy of that management letter. But it is not our record to distribute.
Right, that's very fair. We need to be focused on the ways in which the village can communicate better, differently, or how they might be communicating with villagers well. The focus of this meeting is really to get to where are opportunity areas and how we can communicate better with our village representation as well as them with us as villagers. So if you have any more feedback there, we'd love to hear it. Otherwise, we'll have to
So I would
go into the
imagine,
next.
I would imagine that the auditor's report for residents would give a clear understanding of the status
But again, to Marilyn's point, like let's make sure we're not in the content, but in the medium and in the relationship of how information is dispersed within the village versus what that information is.
Well, that was the latest information shared by the village, was it not, the audit?
But we're to the discussion today, we're focusing on how do we better communicate to villagers.
Truthfully, that's the bottom line, truthfully.
Okay, thank you, Kevin.
Yeah.
Marilyn?
I very much appreciate what Kevin Parrish has been saying, as well as what everyone else here has been saying, and your role as moderator. I think we could be here all night and into the next day because there are so many disagreements on content of the issues that are being raised, and I don't think that's what we're here for, Katie. Correct. So I appreciate your keeping us on focus. And the hour is getting late.
Sure. Amy, please.
I'll be brief, but I feel like I'm hearing that representation from the community in maybe a less official format and would be useful, something like a focus group. I've heard that mentioned before. Sort of just a community advisory panel or advisory board or group of people that seem to represent a wide range of folks in the village would be helpful to council. So that's something we should probably consider.
Here. Yes. Sure, focus groups to get ongoing input from village residents.
Hi, my name is Jerry Blaze. I live on Magnolia. I've only been in the village a couple years. This is a great forum. I think what I've experienced here is just what we're doing here today is what's needed, whether it's a repetition of communication. I don't know that there's a perfect day and time that you can have a meeting like this. I think you need to have a lot of meetings like this, whether that's 5 o'clock, 7 o'clock, multiple days a week, a Saturday, a Sunday, whatever the case may be, to give people the opportunity to have a discussion. It sounds to me like there's a lot of one-way communication, whether that's coming from the council or whether that's coming from residents. So how do you have more of a dialogue as opposed to talking to people, as opposed to having an actual conversation about the issues you guys are bringing up, and not shutting people down, even though this is the intent of the meeting to talk about it. For me, that's the crux that you're hearing here is I don't have a forum to talk about it. So how do you do that? And part of the communication is that doesn't sound like it exists well in the community today. So.
Great. Thank you. Yes, please.
I promised myself I wouldn't say anything tonight, but I live up in West Sharon, and I think that communication is verbal communication between people. And when people talk together, they tend to understand and try to figure things out. And I think if there's any possible way that when something of importance comes up in the village, if there could be some sort of a gathering to discuss what's going to happen and be sure that there are representatives from every area in the village included. And then those people will go back to their immediate neighborhoods and talk about it, and the communication will it'll just get bigger. But it has to be, every neighborhood needs to be included in the conversation.
Thank you. It's 2 till 7. Any other final remarks?
I just want to thank everybody who came here, shared their thoughts, shared their perspectives on the village. I think a lot of interesting ideas have come out here, and we're going to try to sit down as council at some point and sort through them. But this is not the end of this discussion with our residents. I think it can be a beginning. Every council meeting has a public comment section in the beginning, and people are welcome to come up and speak to council. Our normal time limit is 5 minutes, and we stick pretty close to that because we also have a pretty good size agenda to work through after the public comments. But certainly getting some information there. But also the village office is open. The door, they're not locked anymore because of the pandemic. So come on down, see us, talk to us about what's on your mind, and maybe we can help. With that,
before we adjourn, I just want to address the room and thank you all for so openly sharing your feedback, and for council members for openly listening to the feedback from all the residents who provided their opinions today. In these sort of settings, conversations can be challenging, and you hear things that may surprise you, that may not surprise you, that may open your eyes to different perspectives that you might not have been aware of. So I hope that all of this is taken away thoughtfully, and with these ongoing conversations that will continue with residents and within council to be used to very productively move forward and address the communication issues that have existed within the community, and kind of take care of some of these, and bring more inclusion, more transparency, more of the things that we heard today to help better fit the residents' needs, and to help council be great servants and stewards to the communities in which they serve.
Well, Katie, I'd just like to thank you too. You're just back from a vacation, and while the ending wasn't what we had all hoped for, I know you had a good time out there, and you're probably exhausted at this point. So thank you. Sure. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for keeping us on track and everything. It's really helped.
Sure. Welcome.
With that, I have to do just procedural stuff to end a council meeting. First of all, I want the record to show that there was a quorum present here. Madam Clerk, can you confirm that? In fact, all council members were here, and for that I am very grateful. I think it really shows something that these people who are volunteers here and for your village, want to hear from the residents. We want to know what you're thinking. We're willing to come out here and just meet in this kind of informal session and discussion. We also had an agenda, and that agenda had one item on it, which was to listen to comments about communication from residents. We followed that agenda, and we tried not to depart from it. Occasionally there were some tangents there, but Katie managed to bring us back, so thank you. And with that, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.